So the death of an 18-year-old back in 2016 is finally getting the attention it deserves. So welcome back to the channel today, everyone. So Mia Ashton with the Post Millennial published a story this week about an 18-year-old male who was trans that died from complications from a vaginoplasty back in 2016. The link to this article will be below. Y'all, this story is so horrific, and it's quite largely been swept under the rug. I mean, for one, I'm deeply involved in research and in the community and on the procedures, and this was the first time I've heard of this. So first, let me explain what happened. This person was one of the first people who was placed on puberty blockers for gender dysphoria. In fact, she was part of the original study for the Dutch protocol, which has been widely used as the standard care for treatment in dysphoric youth. And what the Dutch protocol says is that you place a child on puberty blockers until the age of 16, and then they go on cross-sex hormones from that point forward. And we know that this person went through this process so young, and so we know there wasn't enough tissue development to do a standard penile inversion vaginoplasty. So when they do that, they have to graft the skin from somewhere else. In this case, it was from the colon. And anytime you graft skin from elsewhere on the body, it makes the surgery a lot more risky. And according to this report, this resulted in the patient developing fetal necrotizing cellulitis, which is a flesh-eating bacteria that spreads very quickly, and the mortality rate is over 24% once contracted. And in this instance, it was caused by E. coli, i.e. fecal matter, due to the use of the patient's colon for surgery. The complications, they started less than 24 hours after surgery and got worse despite all treatments and antibiotics, and the patient ended up passing away. And a reminder that this person was part of the study that they used to justify the use of puberty blockers on children as young as 8, and then to start hormone replacement therapy at 16. That's the study that they used to justify it. And it's just unbelievable to me that this death didn't make the industry pause this practice. In fact, it was completely hidden. Like I said, I didn't even know about it until this story came out, and I'm pretty well researched on the topic. And y'all, we've spoke about this plenty of times on why puberty blockers are not a good idea. Remember Marcy Bowers, the president of the World Professional Association of Transgender Health, has said in the past that they expect surgeons to be miracle workers when working with patients who are medicalized so young, because they have to perform these much more risky procedures on them. On top of the fact that she said patients that are fully blocked at puberty will never be able to achieve orgasm as an adult.
Every single child or adolescent who was truly blocked at Tanner stage 2 has never experienced orgasm. I mean, it's really about zero.
So you're putting children who cannot consent to medicalization down a path to where much more risky medicalization will happen. And remember, Marcy Bowers is also Jazz Jennings' doctor. And you see how many issues that she has had with her surgery. Jazz really went from being the fairy tale trans person, like this person is, we were able to diagnose this so young and they were able to go through, which is not true in and of itself. Jazz was never allowed to explore their gender identity growing up. They were thrust into this lifestyle, but that's a different story. But they went from this fairy tale to the cautionary tale about why puberty blockers are so harmful. And Sydney Watson just did a great video detailing all the issues with Jazz Jennings, so go watch that for a full breakdown on just Jazz. But honestly, if you're really looking out for the best interest of dysphoric kids, you would not put them through this, because not only can they not consent, but you are putting them at a much higher risk when they get older. I mean, even if you think trans kids are valid, isn't the best way to protect them is to take the risk out of these procedures? And like I've pointed out a couple times now, this wasn't a very well-known case, which it should be known to every person before they even start this process. But doctors, every step of the way, tend to brush off the side effects, I mean, it would stand to reason that the colon is not the best place to graft from, as it holds feces and it's, not very clean. And I want to note that this isn't just an issue with the transgender surgeries, which I am on record as to question why anyone would get a phalloplasty, because it's not if you have complications with that surgery, it's when, and that's very well known. But there's an issue with the industry as a whole downplaying all these side effects. I was actually surprised to find out how many complications there are just from breast implants. I mean, did you know that there were 34 people that died in 2016 from a cancer that was developed from their breast implants? Or that up to 16% of women experience complications from which the FDA actually requires a stronger warning, and that happened in 2021? Whereas 1% of those actually need an additional surgery to correct the complications, which that's a lot higher than I would imagine, just based on how widely accepted breast augmentation is and how it seems to be. I mean, the perception is that it's just a routine surgery, but there are complications that arise from it. Whereas now we look at the rate of a vaginoplasty, around 25% have complications and 11% end up needing surgery to correct the issues that they have. But again, the industry as a whole will say that this is an issue. And what's interesting about that, though, is they don't differentiate between the standard penile inversion for an adult that was able to completely develop before having surgery and somebody who was placed on puberty blockers and needs skin grafted or something grafted from somewhere else, and so that they can create the wound. Which again is a much more risky surgery. But what we do need is we need research. We need research on both. We need to know, is a penile inversion, just a standard penile inversion for an adult who goes through this and is able to develop, is that a much safer surgery than grafting from somewhere else by placing somebody on puberty blockers so young? I would imagine so. I mean, it begs to reason when you graft from somewhere else, it's a much more risky surgery. And so a lot of those complications I would assume would arise from the riskier surgeries. But we need the data. I would love to see this issue studied more. But see, it's obvious that the medical industry won't do this research because it would show even more that the use of puberty blockers is not beneficial. And that's one of the biggest things that they're pushing for right now. That is one of the biggest ways that they are able to medicalize, these children so young and keep them medicalized until they, become an adult. Because we know, again, 80 to 90% would grow out of it by the age of 18. The choice is easy. Stop medicalizing minors, even if you believe a child is trans. It's much more beneficial for them to wait until adulthood to be able to make the decision that transitioning is right for them, because they're able to fully develop. I mean, again, if you care about trans kids, this only makes sense for you as well, even if you think that they are completely valid. And this is the best route either way. But with that, let me know what you think in the comment section. Click that like and subscribe button. Follow me across all social media platforms, and I will see you next time.